Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are, whenever you are, whoever you are. It's the Moonshine Jones podcast. First of all, I got to say, I really appreciate everybody for enjoying the podcast. I love doing it. There's times where I may, like most of us, you get busy in your life and you don't get to record as much. That's why I like to record podcasts or episodes and then upload them when I'm not available to do a podcast. I really appreciate it, guys. Really appreciate the support. We're a small podcast, but we are growing, and I think I have a perspective to where people enjoy what I'm trying to say in the world that I see from a perspective of being a United States citizen and, in my opinion, living in the greatest country on earth. That's my opinion. You can live in Spain and believe that you live in the greatest country on earth. By the way, all the people that listen to the podcast around the world and the country, thank you very much for listening. My goal is to give a perspective of the world that I see, of the things that I see, to take a subject and put my, not spin on it, but to put my perspective on it, to say this is how I feel about it through articles, through stories and things like that. So I really appreciate it, and it's so important as a free American, as someone that lives in a country like I do, or wherever you live, that if you are able to do what some countries in Iran, North Korea, China, on, can't do, guess what? Just try it. Just try a podcast. Because listen, each one of us have a different perspective. A lot of us aren't going to be good at doing a podcast, but if you can, document the world that you see. Talk about the things that you see. Talk about the world that you see. I know I'm kind of getting around it, but I'm very passionate about this. This is almost our responsibility as a free people to live in a world and live in a country, our world that we know, that allows us to say what we want to say without persecution or prosecution. And with that being said, today's podcast, we're going to chronicle through a website that talks about, in 6 years ago, but I believe it's still fairly accurate and it could be worse by now, in Venezuela, the daily life of a lot of different people, and talk about, you wouldn't believe, I've read these stories, just brief little details of their lives, and you wouldn't believe what they go through. Now let's get into Venezuela. Is a country in South America, the northern tip, that's located up by the Caribbean Sea. You think the Caribbean, you think just a beautiful area, and it is. It's a beautiful country. But when you have dictators like Hugo Chavez and Maduro, and they've went in and absolutely gutted the economy, mismanagement of funds and all kinds of things, the bill came due, and their fragile economy finally just tipped over. Now you have a country that is in turmoil. Now, I want to say this real quick. I'm on Google. I put in Venezuela, a country, again, 28.44 million people live in this country. That's a lot of people for the size of this country. Take, for instance, Ireland has around 4 million people, so that's a lot of people. Now, I go to Google and I put in, is Venezuela. Well, I didn't put it in. It's just connected to Venezuela. People ask, is Venezuela safe to travel to? Do not travel to Venezuela due to crime, civil unrest, poor health infrastructure, kidnapping, and the arrest, detention, listen to this one, of U.S. citizens without the process of fair trial guarantees. Exercise increased caution in Venezuela. So basically say, do not go to Venezuela. Is Venezuela a good country to live in? However, for the most part, Venezuela is still a great place to live, and most expats are very happy in the country. Here are some of the things that make it such a great destination. I think the above question and answer answered that one. Why is the crime rate so high in Venezuela? Well, the rise of murders in Venezuela following the Chavez presidency has also been attributed by experts to the corruption of the Venezuelan authorities, poor gun control, and poor judiciary system. The Chavez government banned private gun ownership in 2012, but overall crime rate has kept increasing since. So yes, do not go to Venezuela. It is not a place that you would want to go to. If you want to kind of experience the Venezuelan without being in Venezuela, go to maybe Colombia. I would say probably Ecuador would probably be the best one to go to as far as northern South America. All right, with that being said, let's get right into it. Now, this is medium.com. And again, thank you so much for listening to my podcast. I know I'm on to some really good material here and some really good entertainment. You're driving down the road, these are great things that you can listen to, and I've driven up and down the United States too many times. It's a beautiful country, or you're just driving around, or you're sitting at home and you're hanging out and you want to listen to a podcast. Or if you're in some of the countries that we're in, as far as Great Britain, Ireland, Slovenia, different places, wherever you are. I really appreciate that you're getting a perspective from an American perspective of someone that is very proud to be an American, but also live in a country where I'm allowed to exercise my freedom of speech. Okay, again, we're at medium.com. A day in the life of witnessing Venezuela's crisis. Now, again, this was distributed on May 15th, 2016, 6 years ago. But again, I believe it's right on the money where they are now, and it's probably worse. And from what we just saw on the questions connected to the country, where that's usually if you put in England, it'll say, is this a great place to go to? Well, we got the answers there. There's a lot of words to describe what's going on in the Venezuela crisis. Implosion, mess, falling apart. There's the skyrocketing inflation, the lack of basic goods and medicine. The public health crisis. There's the energy crisis with rolling blackouts and water shortages. There's widespread violence. The list goes on. Could there be anything worse than seeing this happen to your country? Though it's painful, Venezuelans on Medium have opened up about their everyday experiences. Here's a translation of excerpts from some of the most recent posts. Now, Aglaia Berluti, has been documenting her country's crisis through her everyday experiences, from getting woken up by gunfire to asking friends to send migraine medication from abroad to witnessing a lynching. Wow. In a recent post, she chronicles her fruitless wait in line to get in the supermarket, chatting with a mother who had to take off from work to get groceries for her children. Now I'm going to stop there. Can you imagine going to Walmart, going to Kroger, going to Piggly Wiggly, wherever, going to some of these grocery stores, waiting in line to just get into the store? Mind you, most of us in civilized countries right now, in the United States, you go to the grocery store, you walk right in, folks. You're right inside of the grocery store. You're just wondering how long it's going to take to get in and get out. These people are wondering if they're even going to get anything inside of the grocery store. Rolling blackouts, folks, that means that there's no power, no electricity. This is South America. It gets hot there. And you have water shortages. I mean, what a horrible way to live. In a recent post, she chronicles again her fruitless wait line. I talked about that. And she wonders how this got to this point. I just talked about, you're waiting in line to get inside of a grocery store. She said, I never thought I'd see a situation like this. I grew up in a flashy, superficial, and frivolous country, a country with fragile economy, but one that could still be sustained, a country where you could find the best imports and traditional Venezuelan food at the supermarket, a country where I could study for 2 university degrees on a sporadic freelancer salary, a country with my little savings, I could buy a new car. Here's the first person. Marianne Diaz H. observed the effects of food and pharmaceutical shortages. A week ago, I ran out of drops for my glaucoma treatment. I searched all the pharmacies in the city. No version exists. I worry about changing treatment again. Only 3 months ago, the ophthalmologist prescribed me new medicine because the old one disappeared from the shelves. Yesterday, someone broke in my car while I was parked. They stole bags of food, not devices, not the battery, nor the car itself, but bags of food. There's another world outside, a world that I can access increasingly less. What do people talk about when they're not thinking about where to get bread? Now, again, I go back to, we live in the United States of America where, yes, there are homeless people here, that poverty exists. Any place where you have free will, where someone can live the life that they want to live without being told what to do, you're going to have people that just fall off. That I've been there. When I first got out of college, because I didn't know I had dyslexia as bad as I did, and I made some bad choices, I was homeless. I wanted to make it on my own, and by God, I did. I made it on my own, living in my car. You talk about tough. Most of us live in a world in this country or around the world where we're focused on our goals and our dreams and our plans. We're not focused on whether we're going to eat. That's a horrible way of life. And it says here, what do people talk about when they're not talking about where to get bread? It's just, it's a very sad situation. Heyman Montano, I believe that's how you pronounce that, who lives in a small city in Sucre State, wrote about what it's like in the country's more rural areas. We are the last ones to receive resources, doctors, as well as food. Now, most people understand your rural areas like the area I'm in right now, where you're away from the city, far away from the city. Those are the kind of people that are apparently suffering the most. I don't know what's going on with far as farming goes and how that works, as far as seeds go to be able to farm with. Apparently not very well. We have a shameful hospital, a solitary bus station, no prison, and plenty of police. An ornamental airport. So basically the airport is just for looks. Trash in the street, a wasted beach. And by the way, I've talked about North Korea before, and I'm gonna do a episode on North Korea. If you ever go there, well, good luck to you if you do. They stage everything to look like everything's normal when it's absolutely not. It is a mansion with a gutted inside. So there's trash in the street, a wasted beach, a putrid smell noticeable between the big beach and the market. Now, mind you, just years ago, this was Venezuela. This is a place where you have a coastal beach. It's South America. I mean, what a place to go to. And now it is not a place to go to. Forgotten Avenue, A Tree Without Leaves. We have no shame. Yes, we have a violin. It's because we have no deodorant and we stink. It's because there is no soap, much less water. We spend money on motels to take home toilet paper and soap and to shower and to have a nice time. Whew, boy, that was, of all the ones that I've read so far, that was very, very descriptive. Juan M. Izquierdo explained a recent day that should have been run of the mill but turned out to be chaotic. At 6 a.m. there was still no electricity because on my block it was darker and hotter from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. To get over this bitterness and start to get ready, we made coffee without sugar. We realized there wasn't any. At 7:45 a.m., about 90 people in our apartment complex, most of whom hadn't showered, waited an hour and a half for transportation to go to work. There wasn't transportation either. At 8:30 a.m., I got to school and I noticed everyone outside their classrooms. There is no electricity. Going home, the teacher left everything until Wednesday. Wow. Oh, I'll just keep going. In another post, Juan wrote, as citizens, we've been subjected to accepting measures and results from poorly conceived government actions. Corruption, evil, which brings us the result of a terrible moment we are living. Without being prisoners, we have no freedom to move freely, even in our own country. We are not free to consume whatever we want, but others choose for us. We're not free to enjoy the basic things, everyday things, the normal, a monument, the work of one of our artists, a film at the movies, stand up at a theater. Seriously, there's no electricity for that. So, and the way they write is, I understand this has probably been translated, so it's sometimes a little choppy, but I think people get the point. So basically, yeah, we're not free to enjoy the basic things, everyday things, the normal things. And mentioned here, stand up at a theater, film at the movies. There's no electricity. I mean, can you imagine these things, folks? Can you imagine living in a place like that where everybody stinks? There is no water. The schools aren't in session for the most part. The teacher left. I mean, what kind of world is this? Ruben Dario Pena wrote about his mom waking up at 7 a.m. to go wait in line to get in the grocery line and his experience in line. I started to take a note of my surroundings, an abundance of senior citizens, mostly women, the presence of youths in uniform. Shouldn't they be in school? Pregnant women and some children oblivious to the situation, taking advantage of the space to run around and play. Yeah, the kids don't really understand because it's all they know right now. B wrote about an upsetting trip to the drugstore. I went to the cashier to pay and saw, to my surprise, that they were selling sanitary napkins. I thought something like, wow, today is my lucky day. The 10-minute wait was eternal. I looked at the pads with excitement and despair. It was my turn. I asked the cashier for a package of pads, and she asked me for my ID card. My love, today's not the day for your card number. Let me just stop there. And again, the way they've got this written out, I'm probably not saying it the way it should be said from a narrator's perspective. He waited 10 minutes in line to get up to the cashier, and he was excited that he was going to get sanitary napkins. She asked him for his ID card, and she said, my love, today's not the day for your card number. Wow. Are you kidding me? I mean, I knew when I was going to do this episode that it was going to be tough. I had no clue how absolutely just sickening these stories are. I couldn't buy pads, nor can I buy toilet paper, deodorant, or contraceptives because they don't exist. You know what I'm using for deodorant? The remains glued to the inner walls of old containers. Not because I don't have money, but because I can't get, and I'm seriously allergic to, anything other than solid lady speed stick. This is a woman talking about this. When I got home, there was a blackout. It took 3 hours for the electricity to come back on. In the stairs, I ran into a building manager who told me to get water because it seems that that's also going to go out. I really want to cry, but I prefer to write this. I'm almost tearing up here. This is, what a sad, sad situation. Having her building manager, her landlord, her coming up to her and telling her, you better go get water because it's running out. I mean, wow. If people could experience this for one day, one day here in the United States, to understand absolutely how we have it. And I understand people are listening around the world, but folks, in the United States of America, we have got it better than most people in the world. And again, if you're in Great Britain, you do. These countries that are civilized countries that are ran the right way to a degree, are ran the right way, obviously better than Venezuela. This is just awful. Luis Carlos Diaz wrote about the shortage of prescription drugs. No country on the continent is in a similar situation right now. Even Haiti, he notes. I've helped 2 people in convulsions on the street because without pills, they are time bombs ready to go off at random. So this year we will bury people. Burying people and lacking jobs and schools to care for the sick, because if one goes down, so does the family. Venezuela, NBS, as a Venezuelan living in Buenos Aires, wrote about observing her country in turmoil from abroad. Every day I read news articles and analyze everything that is happening, and I realize that my fear is to arrive in a country that isn't mine, to be an immigrant in my own land, noting that nothing is or will be as it was before, and the length of time I have in my head to live abroad is growing longer. And that's it. That I kind of wish they would have emphasized a little bit more on that last person that lives in Argentina. The world that they're having to see. They're seeing their home country going through what they're going through. This is everything that I didn't want to read, but I knew that it was going to be. This is a great job by Medium.com and Rachel Glickhouse. This is a great job to understand. Listen, folks, I don't know where you are in your life right now. I don't know what your situation is, but more than likely, it's about 10 billion times better than what these people are going through. Rolling blackouts. That means no electricity. Again, there was very little water. You couldn't get sanitary anything over there. Imagine a woman in the United States of America, for the most part, loves to be clean, loves to smell nice, a beautiful woman, okay? And she can't be a beautiful woman because she doesn't even have the basics that a woman wants or needs. Can you imagine this woman actually going out and getting a pedicure, a mani-pedi, whatever they call it? It's such a sad world. And the thing about it is is, and I'm going to say it, is that's what gets me so much about this country right now, is these, I'm going to say punks, because that's what they are. They've been raised by the education system to believe that short hair and not necessarily short hair, I'm just going by what I see. You got the just people that they would just take communism in a second if they had the opportunity. And they've mentioned, they've said it. This is communism, folks. This is communism. This is what happens when you take, again, a fragile economy and you take a dictator that destroys the country and doesn't manage the funds the way they're supposed to be managed. And this could happen here in the United States. This could happen in any place in the world if you continue to mismanage your country. People want to talk about how bad this country is. Please, folks, if you just read and you could, again, go there for an hour. Go there for 1 hour and live in Venezuela for 1 hour. And you would come back here, at least for a little while. It's how human beings are. At first, you're very respectful and understanding of what you've got. But then after a while, you've got this just amazing world that you live in. And you forget and you lose track and you want more and you want more. That's just human nature. We have so much, especially in the United States of America. And again, if you live in a country that you're listening to this podcast, you've got so much more than what Venezuela has. Can you imagine that, though? Again, rolling blackouts, lack of water, no education, no sanitary. And what happens, folks, with sanitary? What happens when you have a lack of sanitary conditions? That's when disease starts. That's when all kinds of things start and come together. That is a smorgasbord for just disease and all kinds of nastiness. That's what happens. This was a really good episode. I learned a lot on this episode. I hope you did too as well. Thank you for listening. And just look outside and smell the flowers, smell the roses, understand how lucky you truly are. Because more than likely, if you're listening to this podcast right now, you're doing about, again, 1 billion times better than what these people are doing. Have a great day. Go USA.